I believe Senator Clifford has a bill introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have RS 2895. These are technical corrections to statute concerning 100% disabled veterans.
Very good. Committee, any questions or objections to introduction to that bill? Seeing none, that is introduced. Senator Dietrich, I believe you have one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do, and this actually concerns veterans as well. RS number 2907. It's protecting veterans from fraud.
Very good. Questions or objections to introduction to that bill? Seeing none, that is introduced. Any other bill introductions? Do you have one, Senator Fasquedo? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just excited about the other bill introductions. So I do have a RS number 3205 that Natalie, the reviser, is working on, requested from a group in Wichita pertaining just amending existing law on racial profiling. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions or objections to introduction to that bill? Seeing none. Any other bill introductions? Seeing none, we will open the hearing then on Senate Bill 314. How we're going to do this, we'll do some block timing. We have some other work we'd like to get done afterward, but I'm going to give 10 minutes to each side, so you can apportion your testimony accordingly. Just be aware that people behind you will want to speak if possible, but I think we can do it in that amount of time. And then we will stand for questions for proponents and opponents after their block time of 10 minutes. So we give the committee plenty of time to ask questions. So first up, let's have Mike Heim give us a bill overview. Mike?
Mike Heim with the Reviser of Statutes Office. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill amends a statute in the elections code. And what it does is it expands a statute that now prohibits the use of public funds, public machinery, equipment, yada, yada, and so on, or agency government time of any employee and so on, if for the advocation or nomination or election of a clearly identified candidate for state or local office. And what this does is it expands it to promote, oppose, or adoption or repeal of any provision of the Constitution of the state of Kansas or a ballot question. There's a similar bill in the House which has had a hearing. It's broader than what the Senate bill is, and there's amendments that they have not considered in the House. So anyway, the House bill is House Bill 2451. If you got questions, I'll try and answer them.
All righty. Committee, any questions? Seeing none, looks like you got, oh, did you have one? No? Okay. Looks like you got off easy, Mike. All righty. We're going to start with our proponent in-person testimony. And again, we'll have 10 minutes. I will start the clock here once you start. And up first is Senator Doug Shane. Doug, welcome to Fed and State.
Good morning, Chair Thompson and Senate Committee on Fed and State Affairs. I'm really pleased to provide proponent testimony for Senate Bill 314. This is a bill that I had worked on and then included Senator Thompson as a co-sponsor on. And it was spurred because of events that happened in 2025, in the 2025 election cycle. One of the things that I do want to highlight, and the reviser just told you that there is an unplanned companion bill for this in the House, HB 2451. And to me, this highlights the importance of this issue because we had two communities that experienced a very similar set of circumstances and a representative and a senator who did not speak to each other on this issue, both bringing a bill. So I think it speaks to the reality that this is something we need to address. Senate Bill 314 codifies in law what most people believe to be true, that public employees and public servants cannot use taxpayer resources to advocate for or against anything that shows up on our citizens' ballots. Last year, as I said, there was a ballot question for USD 416 Lewisburg. I was put before the community, and several community members, including myself, were pretty aghast at the district's direct advocacy involvement in that particular issue. Distribution of yard signs, clear advocacy promotional materials being sent home with kids, assignments being given to kids, extra credit assignments being given to kids, all of these things which were actually many disclosed actually on social media of all places. And so it caused me to look at our current law because I believed that advocacy was prohibited under current law. And what I learned was that current law only prohibits advocacy when it's for a candidate. And so to me, this bill simply codifies what most of our constituents already believe to be true, and their expectation, quite frankly. I did put out a little poll this morning, actually, on my social media page, asking constituents, do they believe that taxpayer resources should be used to try to influence their vote on anything that shows up on their ballot? And I have yet to have somebody answer yes to that question. Most people understandably believe that it's no. So with that, I'm going to be brief. Representative Wagner has great testimony, and I think that you're going to hear some great testimony from Ms. Reed, where she's actually going to document and show you what happened in her community. With that, I'll stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Okay, at the end of the block, we will open for questions. Senator, or Representative Paul Wagner's up next.
Yes, great to see you, Chairman Thompson and committee members. This bill came up because in the city of Hutchinson, USD 308 had a $200 million bond issue they were trying to pass, which is all well and good. But what started to happen is that there would be the yard signs. You know, they would have no attribution. You'd have a full-page, 8-page glossy mailer. I mean, you have all ran campaigns. You know this stuff is not cheap. It's costing money. The district was frankly very evasive. I eventually had to call the Attorney General's office to find out exactly what are the rules. I'd heard about an Attorney General's opinion. You do have, I mean, in KSA, the 4169A, which does talk about candidates, but does not talk about issue campaigns. The Attorney General's opinion is 93-33, which it comes from 1993, so it's an old Attorney General's opinion, but it does clarify that school districts have an obligation to educate the public, but they are not supposed to advocate. You know, but again, that's just the Attorney General's opinion. I think this bill, Shane, I didn't know the guy from Adam, and it was just shocking. And I will say, even in talking with some of my House colleagues, I have come across others who had this very same experience. There's the end of my testimony, which I will summarize, from a lady, Amber Douglas, who I think submitted written testimony. She said, when government uses public resources to advocate, it creates an uneven playing field where one side has taxpayer money, official branding, staff time, and access to students and families, yet the other side has nothing but personal time and personal money. That is not a fair election, nor is it a neutral government, and that is what Senate Bill 314 is designed to stop. And with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Reed.
Thank you, Paul. And next, Allison Reed, who has a PowerPoint, I believe, Messiah.
Yes, I'm Allison Reed.
You've got 5 minutes.
Okay, I am going to talk so fast, and I'm so sorry. I'm so passionate about this. Any of you have any questions for me after this hearing, I welcome those as well. I am the treasurer for Stop the Bond Hutchinson. We are an organization that got together to oppose a $200 million increase to our property taxes, and as the campaign wore on, we became an IG hotline for all the complaints that the district had about how the taxpayer money was being used to influence this election. I'm going to fly through this PowerPoint, and it's actually a very shortened version of all the information I have. This was originally from the district when I reached out to them concerning the mailer. Next slide. There was an 8-page glossy mailer that was sent out. This was what the front of it was looking like. So I do marketing for a nonprofit in Hutchinson. When I want to send out informational pieces, it's very black and white. We talk about what services we provide. We talk about how many clients we've seen. We talk about how much money we've raised. We've talked about our goals for the upcoming year. This was 8 pages, very strongly advocating. Once I read this, I looked for the paid for by on the document because it was very, very pro-bond and very much soliciting a pro-bond or a pro-bond response from anybody that read it. And the campaign used this exact same resource, and I'll show you that in the next slide. So I just asked the question, can you tell the difference? So one of these was used by the school district as an informational piece, and the other one was used by the campaign as an advocacy piece. There is no difference between the two, except the campaign has slapped a little paid for by there in the corner. Next slide. The campaign and the district also used the same videos to promote the bond. Again, the district was like, this is 100% informational. The campaign used it as an advocacy thing. And here's just a little bit of the transcript. We will need a new building to do that, to provide the best for our children. I think we need to capitalize on that, and on and on. Next slide. So the district actually bought the yard signs that the Vote Yes campaign used. And here's a screenshot of a post from the Vote Yes for Hutch Kids Facebook page. Not only were these signs purchased at taxpayer expense, but the Vote Yes campaign used them as a fundraiser. So if you wanted a yard sign, you were giving the campaign $10. Next slide. And they used those signs. Many of them popped up on school property. Here's just one picture of many that was taken of these signs put on school property. Next slide. The signs showed up in hallways. Kids were instructed to take them home and put them in their yards. Next slide. So this is actually pictures from parent-teacher conferences at Ferris Elementary School. So the signs were there to be given to parents and kids as they left, and also parents told us that parent-teacher conferences were used to push the bond. They were given information about the bond, and they were told how that bond would be a positive decision for each of the school buildings. Next slide. I'll skip over that one. Next slide. So here is an email from the Vote Yes for Hutch Kids campaign. It went out to the PTO. The district has pushed back hard on this, saying there was no collaboration. But when you have the district funding your signs, you have the campaign sending out an email, and you have the PTO providing people to show up the week of the vote to advocate for a yes vote on sidewalks, I think it's very much a collaboration. Next slide. So here's pictures of the kids out in front of the school building. Next slide. Another thing that the district has pushed back on is that this is basically the opportunity for free speech. If you notice the little boy in the corner there, I very seriously doubt he woke up on Monday, November 3rd and wanted to go out and advocate his free speech rights. This was very much coordinated by the district and the PTO and the Vote Yes to try to get the bond in their favor.
You have about 30 seconds.
Okay, and I guess I will just close. I have a lot more that I could say. I will just close that. Taxpayers do not want to see their resources being spent to advocate for the school district's position on the bond. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Allison. Committee, let's open it up for questions now for our proponents. And do we have any? Senator Fasquedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think I want this question to go to Representative Paul. Yes. Thank you. So, so this, I guess we could kind of consider us, as the election committee, but I've served on the elections committee in some aspect for many years in the legislature. So as opposed to doing what the senator and you would like as saying that any state employee using certain funds to campaign would be fined and have a Class C misdemeanor, why not just require that, like currently, lawmakers or people running for office, we don't have to put paid for by on a yard sign? We don't. So why not say that anyone, even us, would now have to put paid for by at the bottom of a yard sign, and why not, why not the paid for by anybody?
Yes, the attribution on signs, has been changed over the last few years, and so in one sense, it isn't required, but that's not really the issue. The issue was the fact that the district, actually paid for the yard signs, and so it said, I support Hutch Kids, bond, USD 308, or bond November 3rd. I mean, I think they're sort of, to me, kind of weaselly way around what they were supposed to do was the fact, well, it didn't say vote yes, but everybody who saw it, it was the vote yes sign, and it's clearly understood as that. But I think this bill would, stop things like that, and having some teeth to it. I think, given the fact that there is an attorney general's opinion, but it might be on the books, but it doesn't mean that school districts abide by it.
Questions? Senator Dietrich, or Senator Francisco, I think was first, and then Senator Dietrich. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and this is also for Representative Wagner. I appreciated your providing that information about the previous Attorney General's opinion. Is there a way to help school districts understand the difference between advocacy and some information about the bond issue? It seems like if you don't have a schools foundation in your community that could be the advocate, how do you get out accurate information? And I'm totally understanding the line that seems to have been stepped over in this situation.
The Vote No campaign, had a campaign. They raised about $2,400. They had social media ads, they had radio ads and such. The Vote Yes campaign had $18,000. I mean, the literal campaign. We have no problem with them, paying for yard signs, doing all that. That's what they should do. And they had donations from a lot of the superintendent and a lot of the people in the district, plus, frankly, a number of construction companies and people who do business with the district were also big donors. That's why they had so much money to spend. But you do, much in the same way that when regular citizens were like, this is crazy, we got to stop this. They had to get organized, raise money, and do it. The people on the other side, the school district, folks, whatever they would be, just get organized like a private committee and run a campaign. I mean, there's no problem with that. It's just when the school district literally was using taxpayer money, that's where the rub is.
So my question is, how do we make sure that a school district can provide the accurate information about this bond covers these 3 high schools, 1 swimming pool, and the repaving of the tennis court, as opposed to we want you to vote for this or not? I'm just wanting to make sure, because somehow the school district has to get that information even to a advocacy group.
Yes. I don't think, I mean, the fact of a school district, the facts about a campaign is not the rub. And again, I believe the bill talks about, support or oppose. If you're just factual information that would a reasonable person would not consider being supporting or opposing, I don't think that there's been any question that that's not legitimate.
Then my only thing that I might look at this is whether promote or support would be the better word in terms of terminology, because just mentioning something may be promoting it, but support and oppose seem to me easier to understand. We'll talk about that when we work the bill.
Okay, thank you. Senator Dietrich.
Thank you. And Representative Wagner, we'll start with you. How's that? And then you can defer.
Okay.
So most school districts, I would say all school districts, I wouldn't even start with most. All school districts have to have a locally elected school board, just like same people that elected you and I elect that school board. So they're the ones who set the policies and control what you can and cannot do with those funds. Superintendents get a bad rap, and I'm a former superintendent, and you can slap me all you want, but I don't do anything without the board's approval. So if the board had would take a position on this. I think you have to go back and look at school board policies. I don't know about, for municipal elections, if it's a municipal issue, that's totally different. But school boards have board policies, and Kansas Association of School Boards does a very nice job every year of giving us updates on policies. And I know for a fact, even though I've been retired 10 years, our policy was you may not use school district funds, or you may not personally advocate on school property for any politician or issue. So, and we're very strict about that. So you can't use, or should not be able to use, school district funds to advocate. You can inform, which would be this school bond election is going to be for a new wing on the middle school to accommodate 340 more kids, period, that kind of thing. So I understand the issue, but I think it begins with the school board. And I guess my question is, after all of that, did anybody ask the school board, did you approve this?
I was at a school board meeting. I mean, we've actually been, I know the Stop the Bond folks have been basically at every school board meeting since, kind of monitoring what's going on. And of course, the Hutch district lost hugely. It was like a 73-20. I mean, they got killed on this. And a lot of it had to do with people seeing, what was going on, that they were spending public money for it. They did mention the USD, it was the finance lady at the meeting, our policy is not to, our policy is, she did explain that it was part of their policy. Either that or it was maybe an email to me. Eventually, they said, we have a stated policy, and we followed our policy. And then they, I think, referenced the Attorney General's, or that there's an Attorney General's opinion, so they didn't have the reference number for it. So, I mean, I think they would acknowledge, but again, they did have kind of a workaround that, well, this is all just informational. I mean, the flyer, and again, I'm sorry I don't have a copy of it, you could see that just because it did not literally say vote yes, that they could get away with it as being just informational, when it was clearly, anybody reading it would see, yeah, I had to vote for the school bond because it's really needed, and et cetera. It was definitely a pro position and not neutral advocacy.
And I would say, Mr. Chair, sending students home with signs is over the top, without a doubt.
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
that would never be allowed, but I totally understand that. I just think this may go a tad bit too far. And on municipal elections, again, you have a city council. They're locally elected. Can people not complain to them? We don't want you using our tax dollars to promote this. I don't know. I'm asking.
I would say that I have generally heard from school board people that they're told that their job is to, be a feedback to the superintendent and support the vision of the superintendent, that they're...
I'd like to work for that district.
Well,
if I might. So the school boards, if I might just, yes, the superintendent presents, let's take the budget, presents the budget with staff, and the board approves or not. So I suppose that's feedback, but yeah,
Anyway.
it should be a little tighter than that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just to build on this a little bit, there's two things at play. There's a fairly generous interpretation of what inform means, so I'll phrase it that way. But then we also have the statutory threshold that the only spend that a school district makes that really requires a school board vote is one in excess of $20,000. And so when you can say, well, it's less than $20,000 and I'm just informing, then the school board won't necessarily sign off on those activities. And I know a lot of the conversation has been centered on school districts in today's hearing, but this applies municipalities, counties, the Attorney General, the Insurance Commissioner, right? This applies to a whole host of offices, so it's really not intended to just pick on school districts. This is saying this is the right thing to do regardless of where you serve as a public servant. It's the right thing to do for the state.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple things about this that I'm just thinking about. So I get messages from folks all the time that talk about, hey, did you see what the school board did? And then you go log into the meeting and there's only 5 people watching and 10 people in attendance. So it's kind of this double-edged sword because people don't know, but then when an issue like this comes about, it is on the school board they have their meetings, they have their discussions, so it kind of works against them in this because that is their avenue to get this information out to the people. To follow up on a point earlier that was made, there was a response from the district, and the district said, we're using funds that were set aside for this. My question is, and I'll probably ask this to the opponents too, I've been in education for 8 years. I see budgets every year. We do post audits every year. I've yet to see a district that has a line for that particular budget item. So was there another question asked of the school board, and this, any of the three of you, about, okay, if you have this money set aside, where is that on your budget line item? Because I can tell you, I've never seen that in a school budget, advocacy for bond issues.
Senator Shane?
So we did have a legislative post audit on accounting practices for districts, and we know that generally speaking, there's not line item accounting, and there wouldn't be a budgetary, and they have to follow the state budget forms as well. So there's not a budget line item for information or, my guess is that it would show up in somewhere in a line item under miscellaneous supplies. That's a line item that shows up in school district budgets in multiple different places throughout the budget, would be my guess is where you'd find it. And so what you're left with is going and trying to assess what the school district reports as individual expenditures. Every school district will have that where they report out their individual, expenditures and their cash balances and their accounts and all of that. And so you try to sort through that kind of stuff to try to find evidence of the spend. That would be where it would show up, but it certainly wouldn't show up in the budget because it's not on the budget forms.
Thank you, Senator Shane. If you could come back up. So the way I read this is that there, in the italics, which is the additional part that's been added to the bill, to the law, there's nothing regarding school districts per se. It's just saying promoting or opposing the adoption or repeal of any provision of the Constitution of the state of Kansas. So they are not specifically mentioned. So however, when it says no officer or employee of the state of Kansas or any municipality shall use, this is just specifying using funds that, in addition to just a campaign of a candidate, or a candidate's campaign, it goes beyond that, opposing or adopting a repeal of any provision that would be on a ballot. Am I seeing this correctly?
Correct. So it adds constitutional amendments and basically any ballot question. So that could be a sales tax question, it could be a bond question, anything that might show up on a citizen's ballot.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, committee. Seeing no further questions, we will move on then to neutral testimony. Sage Mirza. Hope I'm probably butchering it, Sage. I'm sorry about that. Give you a couple minutes here to give your testimony.
All righty. Thank you, Chairman Thompson, members of the committee. My name is Sage Mirza. You're really close with it, so I'll give you that. I am an attorney with the League of Kansas Municipalities. Today we are testifying on Senate Bill 314 as neutral. Last week at the House bill version of this hearing, we testified in opposition to that. We've got a couple less issues with this one here, which is why we are neutral on this one. The reason we're neutral here is because this is what we are already teaching our membership. There's been some mention of Attorney General's opinions. There's another one that wasn't specifically referenced so far, which is 93-125, again from 1993. But it explicitly states public funds may not be used to promote or advocate the position of a governing body on a matter which is before the electorate. However, this does not mean that public funds may not be expended to educate and inform the electorate. So, like has been mentioned, this is really just codifying that. Our kind of concerns that we get into here are just maybe some of the vagueness here in this bill. Again, trying to figure out what exactly promote and oppose is going to mean, where that line is between just purely educational information. If a city is trying to put a sales tax question on the ballot, providing information on how much that might cost the average family, what sort of projected revenue there might be from that, just trying to figure out where those lines are between promoting, opposing, and just purely educational information on that. And then just in addition to that, with some of the vague concerns, where the line is on these officials' time. Can they go out in their private time and still advocate on these issues? Is it only when they're in the office that they can't provide any sort of advocacy either way on these bills? Or does it apply to, they are known as the city clerk in their town, or they're known as a city council member, so they can't, even when they're at the grocery store, provide information on that. So those are our issues there. That's why we're neutral on this. This is what we're already teaching our membership, but we just ask that there maybe be some additional clarifying language on this. With that, thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony, and I'll stand for questions.
Thanks. So did you provide any clarifying language in your testimony that we felt?
I did not put any in there, but I'd be happy, our office would be happy to work with you all.
Obviously, the express advocacy is the important part, whether or not somebody is clearly doing that on public time, using public dollars. So, any questions? Senator Fasquedo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too would like your suggestion, because in Wichita, we've got a race right now, a campaign, an election in March of a sales tax increase. And so, because what do we do about those, not just the school boards and municipalities, et cetera, but what do we do about those groups that form a PAC, and maybe they don't form a PAC, but they've got some money and they're just putting signs out there saying vote yes, vote no. They're on Facebook everywhere right now. So how do we implement a measure that, tells everybody, to get this message across?
Sure. I mean, with private groups, they have their First Amendment rights to advocate one way or the other on that. So we certainly don't want to impose anything on those people. Just, from a standpoint on public officials, being able to provide factual information, specific numbers on things like that. We want to make sure that, that number might look really positive and favorable. That's not a whole lot of extra money, for the sales tax initiative. So that seems like a good thing, and it has convinced me to vote yes on this initiative, but it was purely just factual information. So just making sure that those lines are very clear there.
All righty. Any further? Senator Francisco, sorry. Too many F first names, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. In reading this, it seems pretty clear that the focus is on spending funds, but it's also then using time for which you're compensated. Now, school boards is easy because we don't compensate them, so that's not a problem. But could someone who's representing a city talk about the bond during a public session if that's a time that they're getting paid for? And that may be what we need some clarification on.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know that it's clear from this bill, and so that's, again, why we're neutral on it. We understand the idea and the concept. It's what we're already teaching, but certainly some additional clarifying language, because without that, we worry that there would be some sort of chilling effect. You're going to have these officials that are just afraid to provide any information and afraid to inform their constituents on these provisions.
Senator Thomas.
I think with respect to that issue, and my response to that would be, if anyone thinks on a local issue like a school board or a bond issue that there's not going to be groups formed that come out for or against, I think we all know that's not going to happen. I think there's going to be groups on these issues that come out in support and not support, and they'll do their groundwork. I think if I understand the bill correctly, it's just saying elected officials, no taxpayer dollars put into it. Is that, do you?
Yes, that's our understanding as well. This wouldn't obviously impose any sort of restrictions on private individuals and their First Amendment rights.
So I would just add that it talks about tax dollars, but it also talks about time.
Time.
And so I think time is more questionable. So if you're at the grocery store, I'm assuming you're not on the payroll, unless you forgot the snacks for the board meeting. But so I think that the time is the one question. If you could help us clarify, that might be appreciated.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I currently don't have, any proposed language, but we would be happy to work with you all on figuring that out.
Okay. Seeing no further, thank you, Sage. Appreciate it very much. Now we'll move on to opponent testimony in person. We have 3, and we'll do again a block timing of 10 minutes. Start with Shannon Kimball, KSB. Shannon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Shannon Kimball. I'm a government relations specialist for the Kansas Association of School Boards. We represent nearly 2,000 locally elected Board of Education members across the state. We advocate in front of you based on our member-adopted platform, and in regards to the issue before you today, the language that applies is the constitutional authority. Local boards are the constitutional authority that are charged with management and governance, and also are accountable to district patrons through the electoral process, and therefore need to be the final authority on local management decisions for expenditures, personnel, facilities, and programs. Because of board members' work in governing our public schools and the staff that they supervise and employ, they are uniquely positioned to deeply understand, analyze, and respond to the needs of students in their districts. And they also have a duty to share with their communities that knowledge and that expertise and their evaluation of those needs when they're making board decisions. And those are the reasons why I'm here today sharing our opposition to Senate Bill 314. The bill criminalizes the duty of local board members and district staff to do their job of governing and managing schools with respect to providing school facilities that support student learning. Board members and district staff would face criminal penalties for telling their communities what the needs are that they observe and why they are proposing a particular bond issue to address those needs to the voters. Boards and districts cannot operate effectively or transparently in a space where describing the board's rationale for putting a bond issue in front of voters could land the board member or the staff member with criminal fines or jail time, and that's what we are talking about here. It's quite easy to see where the line is with respect to campaigning for a candidate for office, and it's easy to see the line that you don't ask people to vote yes or vote no on a ballot question. It's far harder to navigate that gray area in between that this bill sweeps into the criminal code. What one person sees as sharing factual information about student needs and desired outcomes and tying that to district priorities and strategic plans, another may see as advocating in favor of the measure. Who decides which view is right? Simply showing enthusiasm for how a bond issue would improve district facilities for students could very well be interpreted as criminalized advocacy under this bill. How can we regulate the kind of speech that we're talking about here? It's really not easily doable. It's not neutrally and not consistently. And that is why we are raising the concerns that making this proposed change will permit this section of the statute to be weaponized against school board members and school staff. Not because they're doing anything wrong, but because they are speaking up about the things that they see right in front of them every day. Let's not expand the police state into local bond elections. Our members ask you to reject this bill. Thank you, and I'm happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
And we will stand at the end of the 10-minute block. Up next, we have Mike Taylor from the Kansas County Commissioners Association. Mike?
Hi, good morning. I'm here representing 360-plus elected county officials all over the state, and we do have some concerns about the bill because, you know, I've managed in my career 5 sales tax referendums, and I always understood that I could not advocate. I would use a citizen newsletter that was already being published to put an article. I have a journalism background, so I would write what I thought was a straight news article, sort of, here's what a yes vote would mean, here's what a no vote would mean. I still got accused of advocating because when this one person read it and they said, well, but if you read this article, based on the facts you present, I should vote yes. And I said, but I never told you to vote yes. Maybe the case is a good enough argument that you should. I don't know. But I didn't advocate for that. So there's a fuzziness there about what is information and what can be interpreted as advocacy. My biggest concern, though, is representing elected officials. If a county commissioner votes to put a sales tax question on the ballot, or you as senators vote to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot, it doesn't make sense to then say you can't go out and talk about why you support or oppose that. And the way I read this bill, it clearly says prohibiting the use of time of any officer or employee for such purposes shall not apply to an incumbent officer campaigning for nomination or seeking re-election. So my question is, what about a sitting county commissioner or a sitting legislator who's not running for a re-election? Would you be able to, in your taxpayer-paid newsletters or at a forum, stand up and say, I support this constitutional amendment or I oppose it? I think that needs to be clarified in the bill because I understand and agree that staff should not be using tax resources to go out and advocate and produce vote yes signs and that kind of thing. And my question is, I think it's pretty fuzzy about what an elected official can do. So, and I had a commissioner ask this question. They voted to put a sales tax reform on the ballot. They were speaking at the local Rotary Club the following Saturday, and they said, now, can I actually say I support this measure? Because I'm the county commissioner who voted to put it on the ballot, but am I allowed to say that I think you should vote yes? I think we need to clarify that in the bill to make sure that we're not criminalizing being an elected official. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And our final in-person opponents, Jim Carliskant. So I butchered that one, I'm sure.
It's Jim Carlson again, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
and thank you for allowing me to appear this morning in committee. Good to be here. I'm a former House Representatives member, a former superintendent, so I have a little bit of background on, especially regarding bond issues. And we have two former superintendents here on our committee, Senator Dietrich and Senator Starnes. When it comes to bond issues, and mainly directed towards bond issues, the bill has been mentioned by two previous speakers. It's very vague. It concerns me. You know, when I was superintendent, and we floated some bond issues, but this bill could get me in trouble for, let's say I was invited to a PTA meeting. I was serving as a superintendent, and I was asked about the bond. I was on school, I was serving in that capacity as superintendent. Would I be in violation? Would my facilities director, who was asked, when he's on the job, what about that roof? What about that, that HVAC system? Also, what about posting bond information on your website, or even publishing, what it would cost the school district, or what it would cost, what it would cost a patron of the school district on their taxes if a bond was passed. So there's a lot of vagueness in this bill, and currently there is issues that are being dealt with already in statute. Why are we creating a bill against it, or a law against it? The promote or oppose, fuzzy words as was mentioned earlier. And, in fact, the Miami County Attorney was asked to the AG's office to make a ruling on the issue that took place in Lewisburg, and the AG's office declined. So, people have been involved, and in making accusations about making kids get extra credit if they get their parents to support a bond issue. In talking to the superintendent in Lewisburg, he assured me that did not take place. So, you hear all kinds of things, but the bottom line is, are we writing a law for two specific thing? When you work with an architect on a bond issue, they tell you mainly what you can and can't do. School board, we've got policies already what you can and can't do. I think we're creating something that goes above and beyond. So we appear in opposition to this, and I'll stand for questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it very much. Committee, there's 10 other opponents who have submitted written testimony on this, so we will open up for questions for our opponents. Senator Blue, I think, was first in line.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the opponents for coming up and testifying. I think in general, there are a lot of times that we do draft legislation on a specific situation that happened, and I appreciate you guys coming with an open mind of things that are happening across the state. But my question is for Shannon or Jim, since we're mostly hearing about what happened in a school board situation, would you guys, after hearing from the proponents, think in that situation it crossed the line?
Shannon Kimball for School Board Association. You know, as I believe that Senator Dietrich referenced earlier, every district in the state has board policy on this. And so if I was presented, because I also am a sitting school board member, so I have participated in passing bond issues in my community, putting them before the voters. If an allegation was made that something like what was described had happened, I, as a board member, would take that to my superintendent and say, you need to investigate this because that goes against our board policy, that crosses the line. The AG has clearly said this is not allowable. And then that would become an employment issue with a staff person. I think that that is a very effective remedy to take care of the kind of situation that was alleged with involving students or distributing signs on school property. I would expect as a board member that that is not the kind of thing that you would do to present factual information in putting forward a bond issue.
And I appreciate that, but I guess I'm just kind of thinking about on the shoe on the other foot. Superintendent supports the bond issue. The school board obviously voted for the bond issue. I go to a school board member, complain about an issue, but everybody's against me on that because they all are in favor of it. So what is the real personnel issue here if I'm going to go complain and as a parent over this issue, but I'm already batting 0 for 3 because the school's in favor of it, the school board's in favor of it, and the superintendent's in favor of it.
Well, but I swear an oath when I take office as a board member to uphold the laws of the state of Kansas and the Constitution, and that includes ensuring that to the best of my ability, that the district has policy and that the superintendent ensures that the district policy is followed, regardless of the content of the complaint and the perspective that it is coming from. So if a complaint is brought to me by a parent, I have an obligation to follow our complaint policy in making sure that it gets to the people that need to get to address it. The superintendent would have an obligation to follow that policy. And if in fact an investigation happened and a staff member crossed the line, even if it's on a bond issue that everybody at the board table is supporting, you would have an obligation to follow your district policy and impose whatever consequences are in policy for employees not following policy. I mean, that's really important, and I think that's a really effective way to ensure that those lines are not crossed by staff in your district. Thank you.
Senator Thomas.
I think Jim might have a comment on that.
Just a comment, Senator. The question was, I think, did they cross the line? Did the school districts in question cross the line? From what Ms. Reed presented, it certainly has some questions. You know, I spoke with the superintendent about it. She assured me they didn't, but you know, here again, you know, I can't play God. The Lewisburg, it was a lease option. It was a lease purchase situation where Hutchinson had a $109 million bond. Lewisburg was building a baseball and softball fields. So I don't know because I can't say for sure, but it needs to be investigated. And I just echo what Shannon had to say regarding a school board member. They take an oath, and whether they like the bond issue or they don't like the bond issue, they have to follow the law, and I think most of them do.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple comments real quick. I love conversations like this because while we like to believe some of this stuff never happens, when it does happen, I think it needs to be addressed. And I think to think this is a one-off, I think we'll be here again talking about it, issues like this. But also, with respect to the Constitution, which I believe Article 6, the legislature put that in statute, created the State Board of Education. I say this often, but I feel the need to say it again. If I buy a business and I'm the owner of the business, and I put someone in charge of general day-to-day operations, I still run the business. And if I go in and give that general manager advice, he can't turn to me and say, well, you gave me general authority, so you can't tell me what to do. So I'll just leave that there.
Senator Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for the proponent and opponents, if I may. And I know what the opponents are going to say, but would you be receptive to an amendment in this legislation? To me, it doesn't quite go far enough, and we need to add some teeth as to penalty, financial penalty, or consequences for crossing that advocacy line and using taxpayer money to advocate one way or another.
I don't know if we, Allison, don't know if she's a lone proponent. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the position of Stop the Bond Hutchison is any sort of taxpayer money that is influencing a bond election in the district's favor. I mean, that is what we're here for today. That's our main advocacy, because we were just continually flooded with complaints from parents about that money and the use of the money, and they were very concerned. And I can tell you too, as someone running a campaign, you want a level playing field. I mean, you want to be able to get your message out just like the other. And once we got organized, we really felt like we were behind, because we knew the district had already done these things to help the bond campaign. So, I mean, I'm not here to advocate a particular part of the bill for, we're really just strongly want people to know what happened during our bond election. I will be honest, in talking with other people about my testimony, they'll shake their head and be like, yeah, we've got problems in our school district too. So I think.
Bad look.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. But thank you, Senator Tyson.
Yeah, and opponent?
Yeah, just real quick, I would suggest that the money that they spent, whatever those resources were, that it be attributed to you guys too, that you get part of their funds also.
Yeah. Well, and we did go to a school board meeting, and all of these complaints here I did present to the school board, and their response back, and I know Representative Wagoner alluded to that a little bit, is they did tell exactly what they spent. They spent $10,000 and something on mailers. They spent $3,000 and something to get those mailers in the hands of all of the business community through the chamber, and they spent over $4,000 on yard signs. And so, yeah, we've kind of gotten a little bit back from them, but we feel like so much more was spent. And even now, the next step for the board, since they've lost this election, their next step is to spend $28,500 in taxpayer money to find out why they lost the bond. And I think, honestly, as somebody who knocked doors in about 8 different precincts for this, maybe start a conversation with people that were at people's doorsteps and, you know, talk to voters. I think that's the best way you can do it. Start a collaboration, start talking to the other side, but it's kind of a battle right now, unfortunately, so.
Okay. Any opponent want to respond on that?
Well, I'll agree with you, Senator Tyson. We will oppose, you know, putting a monetary penalty, you know, as vague as it is, like the example I used. If I were to the superintendent and I talked to a PTA meeting, would I have a $500 fine? You know, there's a lot of vagueness, and that's the point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that you capitalize on that grayness and try to, I just think I'm going to request the bill amendment, so thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Gossage?
This is for the opponents, and Jim, if you could come back up. Sorry to pick on you. I just feel like everything that you described could be done in an informational way, and I think that's how it should be done.
I agree. It's information.
Right. So I don't know that that's gray. I think that you can win.
Excuse me, Senator. My concern is the way it would be interpreted and the way this bill is written. There is gray area. That's my concern. I'll just be on. I need to be honest with you.
I guess for me personally, if I say oppose, you oppose it or you're for it. But if you give information, I think there was a gentleman that said he wrote something that said, if it passes this, if it doesn't pass that. To me, that would be informational, but it depends on how it's written. I remember when my daughter was in 4th grade, she came home from school and said, Mommy, are you going to vote for this bond thing? Because the teacher said we could have some new desks and the gym would be cooler if we, and I'm like, wait, what? Why are they telling kids to go home and tell their parents? I would rather read something that said this is what the funds are going to pay for. That in itself is, let's affect the parents through the children, should not be allowed. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree.
Right. So I would just feel that the superintendent, a board member, we just heard that a board member should follow the laws of Kansas, but if we don't really have a law about this, and we don't, it doesn't appear that there's anything regarding a bond or an issue that would go on a ballot. It's just regarding a candidate's campaign. So this, to me, seems like it is needed if we're seeing these kinds of issues, that keeping it informational. We saw some of those flyers that at the very top said, vote yes on this bond, and then they said, this is informational. You should be able to make up your own mind if it's you want to vote yes or you vote no. And I think as long as the superintendent is speaking to the PTO, or I'm a former classroom teacher, and you think, wow, this bond would help with XYZ, but it wasn't my place to talk to the parents to say, you should vote for this because. It's like, well, this is what the bond would do, and this is what the bond would pay for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions? Senator Starnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just in Shannon's testimony there, just curious as far as what the Attorney General's guidance interpreting the existing provisions of the law right now. What is that specific guidance?
Thank you for that question, Senator Starnes. I did go back and read those Attorney General opinions, and so I don't have them in front of me, but it confirmed my understanding of what the rules are that generally districts have written into their board policy, which is you don't ask somebody to vote yes or vote no on one of these things. I do believe that advocacy in many ways is in the eye of the beholder. So let me explain that a little bit. We have a strategic plan that talks about security and safety, right? And how important that is for student learning. If we propose a bond issue that says we're going to install secured entries at all of our schools, because that promotes our goal of providing safe and secure learning environments for our students, and that is good for our kids. Did I just cross the line? The people that you don't think so, Senator, right? But the people who don't want to have their tax dollars put toward a bond issue might disagree with you. And so then that puts boards and superintendents in the position of every time that we have one of these bond issues, we're going to be litigating the meaning of the word advocacy and whether we have crossed the line. And that is, frankly, I think an endeavor that will not be a fruitful use of the professional time and expertise of the people involved, nor would it be a fruitful use of our tax dollars, because at the end of the day, litigation that the district has to defend is paid for with our tax dollars. So I guess one of the other things that's in our platform is that we would ask the legislature, please don't put us in the position of having to litigate unnecessary lawsuits because there's conflicts in the law or ambiguity. We'd rather spend those resources on educating our students.
Time for one more question, Senator Thomas.
No, I actually agree with part of what you're saying. I think I would be definitely interested to see in some sort of buttoned-up language, because I agree, we don't want people out actively searching for reasons to tell board members, you're breaking the law and blah, blah, blah. So I agree with that point. So definitely interested in seeing potential compromising language there to button up the language and then leave it up to the will of the committee.
To me, the crux of the matter comes down to the fact that you have egregious examples like what Allison Reed presented, and then you wonder why nobody clamped down on them then. And you don't want that to continue because it is a bad look. And so I think we understand the concerns from the opponents that we do need to be cautious on the language and make sure it's very clear. But on those egregious type things where it's clear that it is being abused, that's what's precipitated this bill.
If I may, Senator, I would point out that there is a process that bond issues go through to be certified before the bond sale happens. And we have seen, not related to this kind of issue, but to other non-compliance with disclosure requirements and other things that are in law about bond issues. We have seen instances where the state has refused to allow the sale of the bonds to go forward because the election was not conducted according to the rules that apply. And so I would suggest that there are already remedies in law that are pretty significant. If you passed a bond issue and then the state says you didn't follow the rules, you don't get to move that forward, that's a significant detriment in terms of moving those things forward. So thank you for your time.
All right. Yeah, we are out of time. Committee, I'd hope to work 2331, but I am always respectful of everybody's time, lunch hour and other meetings, so we won't do that today. I apologize to the funeral directors. They were here to kind of help us out. We're going to try again tomorrow if we can. Committee, we put out the agenda for next week. You might check on that. We'll have meetings tomorrow and hearing on SCR 1617. Try to finish up working those bills if humanly possible. And with that, thank you.